with you. All right? Good. Last week, when we had a half hour for a sermon, I gave you the choice of another hymn or a half-hour sermon. You chose the hymn. This week, I'll give you the same choice. Half-hour sermon or a hymn? Hymn. It's a hymn again. The hymn wins again. All right, Bill, you going to choose this one? No, you pick the last one. What's Here I Am, Lord. Is that 593? It might be 593, but I don't know. Yes, 593. 593, and we will sing all three verses. How's that? Sitting there, try standing up here in front of over 100 people and having to preach. You want to talk about something that makes you sweat and give you cold chills at the same time. This is it. Yeah. I was looking at some things that people used to believe on the internet. Some interesting things from our own culture. Did you know there was a time in the U.S. when a lot of people believed that if you were in great pain from something, that if you put a knife underneath your bed, it would cut the pain? Seriously. If you put a sharp knife under the bed, they believed if you're laying in that bed in pain, that sharp knife would help cut the pain. Anybody ever heard of that? No. Yeah. Yeah. And another one about healing was if a woman is going to give birth, be careful that you don't frighten her with a snake or a frog or a spider or something, because the baby could be born with a birthmark that looks like a snake or a spider or a toad or whatever you scared her with. People used to believe that. That might explain some of the people I've met. Look at them, but does this sound really bizarre to you? People used to believe that. Some of the things, how did George Washington die? They bled him to death. He had a real bad case of what they think was a nasal infection and pneumonia, and his doctors figured, got to get that bad blood out of him, and they bled him to death. Yeah. Ask your doctor if he does that. If he practices bleeding, or if you're in his office and he comes at you with a jar of leeches, run, no matter how ill you are.
They still use that.
Yeah, they do. When I was a kid, there would sometimes be a knock on our door. This was back in the 1950s, late 50s. And there would be somebody standing there, the old door-to-door salespeople, remember that? And this guy would come around about once every 3 months, and he'd have a big box in his arms, and he was selling cans of Cloverdale salve. Anybody remember that? How many remember that? Am I that old? He'd go door to door with a round metal tin about that big around and about that thick, and inside was this real goopy petroleum jelly kind of salve that he said would cure just about any itch and any kind of irritation and all those kinds of things. And it was only $1 a can, and I remember my dad would always buy a couple of cans, and he just said, "This is whatever's wrong with you, this salve will take care of it. Got an ingrown toenail, put it on there. Got a chest cold, rub it on there." I was scared to ask him about toothaches, put that stuff in your mouth. But he just believed that salve could cure just about anything. Our medicine cabinet was full of those cans of salve. $1 a can. We're always looking for ways to find healing, aren't we? Aren't we? We always feel as though there's something in our lives that needs to be healed. Always a certain amount of fear and trembling. Sometimes it escalates. Sometimes things go pretty well. Sometimes the rug is pulled out from underneath your feet and you land flat on your back. Sometimes it feels like things are going okay and then somebody's knocked the wind out of you. Whatever it might be, whatever you're going through, seems so intensely personal that your pain can't be understood by anyone else, and you want it to go away. And we live in a society that tries to make it go away, don't we? Yeah. Have low self-esteem? Go see the plastic surgeon. They'll take care of that for you. Feel depressed? Go sit down at the neighborhood bar with everybody else and just drown it away. Interesting, though, they have to keep going back night after night. You wonder why we live in a drug culture? We don't know how to deal with our pain, where to go to find our respite, our rest. So we'll do just about anything to anesthetize ourselves, won't we? Anything from entertainment to drug abuse. Whatever it is. I don't want to think about it. I don't want to feel it. The prophet Jeremiah. People always say that the prophets were complaining about something. Always pointing out sin, always pointing out what's wrong with people. And they did a lot of that. But you know why they did it? Why they were pointing out sin? Why they were pointing out what's wrong with society? Why they were always preaching about clean yourself up or else? Because they loved the people they were talking to. That's why. Because they had such a burden for them that it burned within inside them. The words of God seemed to burn inside them until they had to come out. Isaiah described it as the hot coals of God being pressed upon his lips. And he had to speak those words. words that would help people find their healing, find their peace, find their place in life. So, when Jeremiah was looking at all of the people one time, looking at the area of Gilead. Gilead is in the Transjordan area. It's a very large area. And it contained 2 or 3 of the tribes of Israel. And that's where Jeremiah had come from. And Jeremiah had a special attachment to the people in Gilead. He had grown up there. He was related to most of the people there. And he was called by God to help lead them into righteousness, to keep them close to God, to be their conscience if he had to. That's not easy. And a good prophet can look around him and they can see where the people are falling short. And he saw a lot of that. They were starting to worship false gods. They were starting to ignore the poor among them. They were starting to pay no attention to the widow and the orphan. They were starting to neglect the holy days and the religious laws of the land. And Jeremiah was witness to the results of that. The results of that were they were starting to suffer as a people. They had no sense of direction. Crime. Everything that bothers our society today was bothering their society. It looked as though they were pulling so far away from God that they couldn't even find their own way back again. And the people began to recognize it, but didn't know what to do about it. They had pulled so far away from God, they didn't know the first thing about trying to get back into a relationship with God. And that is when Jeremiah cries out, "Is there no balm in Gilead?" Kind of like that salve the guy was selling door to door. If you don't know what that is, it's like it's that goop you just rub on something that hurts, something that's sore, to try to heal it. Is there no balm in Gilead? Is there no relief in Gilead? Is there no healing in Gilead? Has it gotten that bad? Well, I can remember as a kid, we think kids have it made, don't we? We keep thinking we'd like to be a kid again. That's when life was good. That's when life was easy. Yeah, I wouldn't mind being a kid again, but you know what? It wasn't all that easy, was it? When you're a little kid, little things that look little to adults, problems that look small to adults, are really huge. And they hurt. And I can remember being picked on, ridiculed because of my bad eye, being the skinny kid and always told that there must be something wrong with me. That boy's got the rickets. I didn't know what the rickets were, but I thought it was something related to a rat. And I can remember a couple of the kids in the neighborhood, all they lived for was to harass me, and if they could catch me, beat me up. And there were sometimes you didn't want to go to school. I'm sure some of you felt that way. You didn't want to go to school because there's somebody there that always made fun of you, picked on you, made you feel small. That happens. Or maybe some of you were the bullies. Maybe we should, no, we don't want to raise our hands about that, do we? No, I don't think so. I can remember many times running home from school and feeling safe when I got in the house. But I can tell you when I felt the most safe as a child. It was when my dad would come home from work. I always thought he was a big guy until I got to be 6 feet tall myself, and I realized he's not that big. But he would come home, and no matter what was bothering me, he made me feel safe. He made me feel loved. I used to love to stand next to him. And if he put his arms out to pick me up or pull me onto his lap, I loved to press my cheek against his whiskers. He had that 5 o'clock shadow that I always wanted and still never get. And I'd rub up against that. And he smelled like Menin skin bracer. And his muscles were firm, taut. And I'd go to bed at night, head up the stairs, get tucked in, and I'd lay there, listening to the train in the distance, the low rumble of my dad's voice down below, that deep voice. And I knew I was loved, and I knew I was safe, and I knew nothing was going to happen to me. That was my place of refuge when I was little. Then we grew up. We're going to try something, okay? With your permission. It's kind of warm in here, so kill the lights, Jenny. Those 2 switches right next to you, right there. Down you go. There you go. Now, if this is putting you in a mood to take a nap, that's okay, because here's what you're going to do. Close your eyes. Just relax. Keep your eyes just gently closed, not tight. Take a few deep breaths. And I want you to start thinking some really good thoughts. Just breathe deeply, like you're the only one sitting there. Let your mind go back to when you were a child. Think of where you were happiest. Where were you when you were at your happiest as a child? What were you doing? Remember it. Touch it. Let it embrace you. Where were you when you found such a sense of peace and love when you were a child? Where could you go when you were little? A place where you knew all was safe, all was well. Go there. Let your mind and your heart drift away to there. Feel it again. Long for it again. Ask yourself, what was it that made you feel so good, so safe, so loved? Now come forward in time. Keeping your eyes closed, come back to the present. Ask yourself what troubles you now. What causes you to tremble and fear? What is it that upsets your soul? What are you looking for that you can't find? What is there in your life you want release from? Now ask yourself what you've been doing to try to find that release, that healing, that help. Ask yourself, is there no balm in Gilead? It does feel that way sometimes. It feels like we're lost and we're alone and we're broken and we're hurting. And we need to hear the voice of the prophet, who ultimately tells us there is a balm in Gilead. Jesus said, cast your burdens upon me. Follow me, for my yoke is light, my way is easy. Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you who are heavy laden and burdened, and I will give you rest, peace, healing." Now let's come back awake, shall we? Go ahead and open your eyes if you haven't drifted off. What is there in your life that you can't get through, you can't get past? What is there that causes you pain, anxiety? What are you doing about it? Are you just longing for that time when you were a child again and had a safe place? Maybe you've already found your safe place and you can share that with someone else. But there's so many of us that haven't. And we end up looking in all the wrong places, don't we? There's a song that says, "When the storms of life are raging, stand by me. When the world is tossing me like a ship out on the sea, thou who rulest wind and water, stand by me." You feel that way sometimes? When we're going through the storms of life, we want God to calm the storms, don't we? We want to remember the Christ who walked on the waters during the storm and said, "Peace, be still," and all of the fear went away. And I believe that sometimes God does enter our lives and makes the storms go away. I believe that. But more often, I believe that God allows the storms to come to our lives and calms us. Because that's what we really need, isn't it? That's what we need. That's what Christ offers. If you haven't tried that, well, I just wonder why. Because there is a balm in Gilead. Let us pray. We need you, O God. The storms of life often rage. Responsibilities weigh heavy upon us. We've hurt others and they've hurt us. We tremble at what tomorrow may bring. We try to cover up the pain in ways that only make it worse. We need healing. We need your Son, the Christ. Help us to offer our hearts to him. Help us to simply say to ourselves, even right now, "Come into my heart." Help us to have the courage to leave our hurts and our pains and our fears at his feet. Not that they would go away, but that we can find our calmness, our healing, our peace that passes all understanding, the gift that Christ offers. In his holy name, amen.